The tension between India and Canada refuses to die down, fueled by the continuous filibuster by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his echo chamber, even as they turn a blind eye to pro-Khalistan activities, chanting of anti-India slogans, desecration of the India flag, tearing down of posters of the Prime Minister. All of that is allowed to continue unfettered. Now India has also turned up the heat in equal measure. First, the Indian government called out Canada through the Ministry of External Affairs, and then at the United Nations, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also presented a charge sheet of sorts that spotlighted the rising violence, organized crime and extremism on the watch of Justin Trudeau. While setting the record straight on extrajudicial killing charge, Mr. Jaishankar also said that this is neither the policy or government of India, and neither has the Canadian government given it any evidence, and when it does, we are willing to consider it.
One, we told the Canadians that this is not the government of India's policy. Two, we told the Canadians saying that, look, if you have something specific, if you have something relevant, let us know. We are open to looking at it. We've given them a lot of information about organized crime leadership, which operates out of Canada. There are a large number of extradition requests. There are terrorist leaders who have been identified. Our concern is that, it's really been very permissive because of political reasons. I'm not part of the Five Eyes. I'm certainly not part of the FBI. So I think you're asking the wrong person.
All right, joining us on the show, we have former Foreign Secretary of India, Mr. Kanwal Sibal. We also have Mr. Gary Keller, who's an advisor to the former Prime Minister and Finance Minister of Canada, Foreign Minister of Canada, and Kory Teneycke, former advisor to the Prime Minister of Canada, is also with us. Mr. Teneycke, I want to first start with you, and apologies if I didn't get the pronunciation of your name right.
But it's Teneycke, but close enough.
Teneycke, apologies. So, Mr. Teneycke, it's been 10 days now, and like the External Affairs Minister of India said yesterday, any evidence would be very welcome at this point. Can we expect it anytime soon?
Well, I'm not sure that there's going to be any public disclosure of that, and certainly I don't have any of that information either. But clearly the government of Canada believes it has very strong evidence, and it would look like that other allies like the United States would seem to concur that there is strong evidence that that the government of India was involved in what was an assassination of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil, and so I think it's a very serious incident, and the National Security Advisor to the Government of Canada went to India prior to the Prime Minister's visit to provide that information, but it's not in the public realm, and I don't anticipate it will be anytime soon.
But if indeed there is credible evidence, then why is it not being called credible evidence? Why is it being called credible allegations and credible charges? Even Jagmeet Singh today has said that if there is credible evidence, then indeed it is of great concern. Nobody is actually talking about what is the evidence.
Well, speculation and what's in the public realm, and I don't have anything, more than what you do, is that, it's signals intelligence, so intercepts of phone calls and the like, that is the basis of this, is what what is being reported in Canadian media, and I'm sure in your media as well. So, but I think myself and many other people, and I'm sure many people in India, would like to see more detail around that. I'm not sure that that's going to be forthcoming, though.
Exactly the point. That can you take an issue all the way to the United Nations, speak about it, not just in your House of Commons, but then make it a global issue, get Five Eyes involved, get India involved, take it to the G20, demand a joint statement condemning India based on what everyone agrees upon at this time is speculation. We are speculating, you are speculating, the Canadian media is speculating, and it seems even the Prime Minister of Canada is speculating. So when do we actually get to see this evidence?
I'm afraid I don't have an answer to that question for you. I think there is a keen interest on everyone to see more information around this, and I guess we'll have to wait and see whether that is forthcoming or not.
You know, Mr. Sibal, at this point, I almost feel like all of us are like the Premier of British Columbia, who also said that I'm so frustrated because I haven't seen anything. This has turned into a global circus of sorts. Where does it end, Mr. Sibal?
You know, there are a lot of holes in the version that the Canadians are giving. Just now we heard that the Canadian National Security Advisor came here more than once and talked to our people. Our side is saying categorically, and our foreign minister has repeated this in his conference in the United Nations, that the Canadians have given us no specific intelligence. And that if we are given specific intelligence, we are willing to look at it. Now, there is such a big gap in the Canadian version, and the responsible statement of the government of India, initially at the level of the Foreign Office spokesman, reiterated by the foreign minister himself, categorically saying, you've not shared any evidence with us, share it. So why don't they share it if they have HUMINT, if they have SIGINT, and if they have whatever? Share it. Now, what stops this Canadian National Security Advisor from sharing such information with our National Security Advisor behind the scenes? And if that is so clinching, surely the Indian reaction would be very different. So I think it is a kind of a drama that's going on for political reasons. See, the other thing is, and it is interesting that, and I saw this on the social media, that when Nijjar was shot, his son immediately said, the Prime Minister Modi is behind this. And this kind of allegation and this line has traveled right through the Canadian police and Canadian intelligence agencies and Canadian, the Prime Minister's office and the Prime Minister himself to blame India. If there were two people who were involved in assassinating Nijjar outside the Gurdwara, they haven't been caught. Now, where is that SIGINT and HUMINT and everything else which has prevented Canada for 3 months from locating who these people are? They are in Canada. So I think the Canadians are playing a political game. Trudeau is playing a political game. He's in political trouble. He's dependent on Jagmeet Singh, NDP, who has 25 seats. Without that, he can't survive politically. And he has to cater to this body of supporters among the Sikh community. And he doesn't want to appear not to be going the whole hog in trying to promote the case of these Khalistanis that India is responsible. So he's distracting the whole affair, the responsibility of the Canadians themselves in encouraging, in overlooking the activities of these people at various points, when they threaten to kill our diplomats, when they take out processions, glorifying the murder of Mrs. Gandhi, when they hold referendums, when they openly call for breakup of India and all that. And all the Canadians have to tell us is that there is freedom of expression in the country which we must preserve. Now, I don't understand that this freedom of expression involves also overlooking actual threats to diplomats formally accredited.
So let me take the first point you made,
if
sir.
If they don't have laws to prevent this, then they must develop laws to prevent this.
The first point that you made about a long-drawn drama. Is this a wise move, Gary Keller, to drag it out? Now, everyone is talking about the marches that are happening on the streets of Canada, about the plummeting popularity of Mr. Trudeau, the shaky government that he has with the help of Mr. Jagmeet Singh's party. Do you really think that this is a wise ploy to drag this out and hope that the Liberal Party is going to be supporting him purely on the basis of him seeming sympathetic to the likes of Mr. Nijjar and Gurpatwari Pannu?
Well, just prior to that, I think it's important to note that what we have here is essentially a he said situation. The Trudeau government is saying one thing, the Modi government is saying another thing. And my sources at some of the highest levels have said that, the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, the National Security Advisor, and the head of our intelligence services have visited India on a number of occasions and have shared that intelligence with the government of India that was derived from a Five Eyes source, and that the case was raised by President Biden at the G20 with Prime Minister Modi. And so for whatever reason, we do have a he said situation on both sides, and I don't think we're going to resolve that in the near time. Look, the relationship in Canada around electoral politics has always been present, and the Canada-India relationship has blown hot and cold for at least 50 years, ever since 1974, and the issue of the CANDU nuclear reactors and the use of Canadian fissile material, and it's always been blown hot and cold. Sometimes for diplomatic reasons, sometimes for trade reasons, but also sometimes for diaspora politics reasons. And the question is really, in Canada, we've had evidence of Chinese interference in our political system, in our elections. The government has basically, along the way, said to Parliament, that's very sensitive material. You can't have that. You can't see that, and that has been a festering problem for the government from a political and a national security perspective for a number of months. We have these allegations, and if the allegation has been you haven't been sharing enough information, perhaps the Trudeau government decided, well, that was not a successful strategy in dealing with this. Maybe we're going to just go out and let it all out in public and make the accusation in public, because that's a different way of handling the situation. Now, reasonably, people can debate whether or not that was a responsible approach, and I think that question is happening in Canadian media. And I would say the opposition parties are asking very pointed questions of the government in the House of Commons on a daily basis about what the government knew and when did they know it. And if they do have proof, that they should make as much as possible known, given obviously the sensitive nature of that information. But I think there are a lot of questions being asked about who knew what when, and the government's approach to it.
But is this usual?
And I think
this
that
kind
reasonable
of
people can debate
opacity,
that issue.
this public opacity, is this usual?
Well, I think in the case of this case, I think the government would say we've been more open than in the past with other allegations of interference. But the other challenge, too, for both sides, for both Canada and India, is this was a murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. There will be a judicial investigation, a police investigation, and some of those things will come out either in open court or in proceedings.
Okay.
And it will not all stay behind closed doors. I think over time we will know more, simply because of the way the judicial system works in this country.
Okay, Mr. Sibal, respond to this. The argument is it's not as if Canada hasn't presented the proof. They have behind closed doors. For example, during the G20 summit. But when India stonewalled and decided to sort of, just brazen it out and say, oh, this is absurd, they were forced to go public. So the argument is proof exists, proof was shown, India flat out denied it, hence they had to go public, and eventually in a court of law it will be shown.
This is assuming that the government of India is responsible. It's a mafia kind of a government. When it is presented with evidence, they refuse to acknowledge it. This is ridiculous. It's a responsible government. Look, India has been suffering from terrorism right from the middle 80s. And in the case of Canada, let me recall Jaishankar Singh Chauhan since 1969. We have terrorists who have done absolutely unspeakable terrorist offenses against our country from our neighbor next door. None of them has been targeted. They're all surviving. Why should government of India take the risk of eliminating somebody who's absolutely not in this league at all, and commit this kind of a thing on foreign soil, knowing that at the end of the day, if such things are done, you may try and prevent disclosure, but sooner or later, things have a tendency to come out, and it can be very embarrassing. The second thing is that if, as the Canadian National Security Advisor and whoever else came and gave solid evidence to India, and India said it is all motivated and baseless, and formally saying you haven't given us any specific evidence. And if tomorrow, as was said, in the judicial process or further investigations, it comes out that there is solid evidence, then India is taking a huge risk. Will any responsible government take such a risk? They would try And that if actually this evidence is so powerful and so convincing and so plausible, the government of India would actually deal with it behind closed doors and try and calm down the matters and deal with the issue in a much more responsible way.
Mr. Teneycke.
There is no interest in India to challenge the Canadian government. The point is actually the government of Trudeau's government wants cooperation from India. And for decades, they have refused to give us any cooperation on our concerns. I have it on good authority that we have presented dossier after dossier after dossier formally to the Canadian government with absolutely no cooperation from the Canadian side, no constructive engagement of any kind. And now they're pretending they are victims. It's very convenient.
Mr. Teneycke, for 40 years, despite the fact that we have been at the receiving end of criminals taking shelter in Canada, India has followed the rule of law. Why would it in year 2023 decide to do a hit job on a person like Hardeep Nijjar, who at the end of the day, yes, is a criminal, but surely isn't the biggest threat to India right now on Canadian soil?
Well, I think that's really, the big question as to why would this happen if it did occur. It's possible it could be, rogue elements within Indian intelligence services. There's a lot of things that people are speculating about. But where I think there's a very legitimate frustration on the part of the Indian government is a perception that Canada has been very lax in terms of pushing back against those funding Khalistani separatism within the borders of Canada. This is not a new issue. It's been raised by the Indian government many, many times over the years. So I think that's a valid criticism that exists there. And there are sort of electoral politics reasons because of the size of the Sikh community and the popularity of Sikh separatism within portions of that community, that the perception is that Canadian political parties, for those reasons, turn a bit of a blind eye towards it. And I can certainly understand the legitimate frustration that the Indian government and the people of India would have around that. I would point out that terrorism from Sikh extremists is something that has happened in Canada as well. The largest terrorist attack in Canadian history was the bombing of the Air India flight. Killed 300 some Canadians. So, this isn't a new issue, and I understand the frustration that the Indian government probably has around that. Now, did that frustration get to a boiling point to the point where something like this happened? Certainly that's what the allegation is. I certainly hope that isn't the case.
And if I may, it's not just about the frustration with the allegations. Now with the kind of details coming out, Gary Keller, for example, what the Washington Post wrote, they have examined the scene of crime, and what the locals are saying is very different. One, that the assassins were Sikhs themselves. Two, that it was actually the police which took between 12 to 20 minutes after the gunshots for the first responders to arrive. Three, that there are locals and eyewitnesses who are saying that the Surrey police has not even decided to go and investigate the eyewitnesses, etc. so far. It's been close to 3 to 4 months, and the investigations themselves seem very slipshod. So on the one hand, investigations are dodgy, and yet another country has been accused based on some other intelligence of assassination.
Yeah, I've read the Washington Post report, and it's certainly interesting because it's a new angle, and especially because it's an American newspaper breaking news about a situation that took place on Canadian soil. Maybe that speaks sometimes to the investigative nature of our Canadian media in Canada, but that's a subject for another day. I think I've seen those accusations. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have denied those allegations. I'm sure there will be, as part of the investigation, these will be looked into. There are the ability for separate agencies next to the police forces to investigate the handling of police action, if in fact that is true. But I do also want to go back to what Kory as well is, Khalistani radicalism in Canada is a real thing. It's a real live issue. And, having been in government in the past, I have experienced cases where the Indian government has raised cases. Often the case of the Canadian government has been, especially around extradition requests, requesting certain rights be afforded to those accused of those things, that they are returned to India, and often the negotiations have broke down on that basis. But yes, Canada does have a problem with the actions of Khalistani activism in Canada. We've had these fake referendums that have been organized by Khalistani groups in Canada, and they've been obviously very active in the Greater Toronto area and the Greater Vancouver area, where the largest sort of populations of Sikhs live in Canada. And to Kory's point, yes, there are sometimes electoral politics that go into the decision making of these. There was recently a column by a former foreign policy advisor to Justin Trudeau, Omar Aziz, who basically said that certain actions were taken or not taken based on electoral politics in the Lower Mainland and the GTA. And I think it's incumbent on all political parties in Canada to take note of these actions and be very, very careful in how they handle these situations, because as we see, it's a very sensitive issue with a large population in this country.
Absolutely, and not just the people of Canada now, but the people of India, and practically the entire world now that is looking at what exactly is going on between India and Canada with these serious charges. Let's just see the evidence. Thanks very much, all gentlemen, for joining me. Thanks for watching.